Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob, and I'm your host, BMR. And as always, I'm joined by the bearded one, Tex. If this is your first time here, please subscribe on YouTube to Tex's Front Porch. Give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to hit the alert bell. You can find us on Odysy Radio, iHeartRadio, and on Facebook at Texas Front Porch. You can also reach us by email at paracryptidencounters@gmail.com or by text at 972-559-0988. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube to Bigfoot Michigan Rob. If you enjoy our content and would like to support us, the Super Chat is always open, or you can Venmo us at @Tex6717. Thank you and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Hello, Tex.
Howdy.
How's it going, my man?
Good, man. Good. It's enjoying a pseudo day off, but not really. I've been busy doing the whole getting moved and building a new studio and all this kind of stuff. So it's a never.
Hey, and I'd like to get into that, man. I'm frankly, I'm jealous. Tex is moving and building a recording studio in his new home, and I don't know what to do. But you know what? I know Tex has got his lawn people over there. We got a great guest waiting backstage, so I'm going to get into it. First of all, everybody, the Alabama Bigfoot Conference, June 10th, 11th, and 12th. Tex, myself, and Jason Mclean will be speaking there. Get on the website if you want to come on down and check us out. Please do so. Also, we're on Odysy Radio and iHeartRadio. We'll be cutting the show about 52-minute show. So all you folks listening on Odysy and iHeart, please subscribe and catch us live for continuation at Texas Front Porch or Bigfoot Michigan Rob.
And we are now on Rumble also.
Very good. I did not know that until now. Thank you for that, Tex. It's always great to hear these things. And boy, my day has just perked up because yet another platform on which to provide our service and our content to our illustrious audience. Speaking of illustrious, this will be the third time for this great friend of our channel and has become a darn good friend of mine over the last several years. You know him from Space Style Radio. He is the host. He is the creator. He's also an experiencer. He's experienced UFOs. He's experienced the angel of death, alien abduction, and he knows an alien, which he calls and named Carl. With that being said, for the third time on Space Style, on Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Mr. Dave Scott. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, since Rob's not going to bring you up, Dave, I'll bring you up. There you go.
I was wondering who's going to bring me in. Who's bringing me in? But how you guys doing? It's always a pleasure. I don't do a lot of interviews, guys. I really don't. So when I get an opportunity to hang out with some friends and just, kind of BS our way through these extremely awesome topics that we get to talk about on a daily basis, it just makes life worth it, And so thank you so much again for having me and, your audience and welcoming me in. It's always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Thank you for that, Dave.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. It's, we've gotten to know each other. Of course, you and Rob have known each other for a while. Y'all go way back, y'all are, beer drinking buddies or whatever. And, but it hasn't, we haven't known each other that long, Dave, but it's kind of like, to me, we fell right into it,
Yes.
And, I gotta tell you, there's been a lot of stuff behind the scenes that not everybody knows about that, we've been talking to you and I've always passed the thank you on through Rob. So I'm going to do this publicly. I just really want to say thanks for all the help and the support that you've given us, Dave. It means more than you'll ever know.
Well, I appreciate that. And Tex, I look at you the same way I look at Rob, where Rob's like this brother that I never had. And it's kind of been like that since day one. And then when he introduced me to you, and it was like, man, this is my big brother from Texas here, who is an ass kicker and takes names along the way. And I like that kind of people. But the big thing is, guys, for me, I don't mind helping anybody. I really don't mind helping anybody. The frustrating part about it is this. The one thing I love about you guys compared to, a lot of others that I've helped over the years, is this. A lot of people will ask you for your help, and then they go and do the exact opposite of what you explain to them. Like I have a lot of people come up to me, Dave, how did you build Spaced Out Radio? How did you make it such a one of the bigger names, so fast? And I still don't think we're a big name. I think we're I don't think we're an A-League show. I think we're a B+, if that makes sense. I look at A-League shows like Coast to Coast AM or Jimmy Church or people like that who've, put in way more years than I have. But I would say we're a solid B+. And over the years, I've had a number of people say, look, how did you go from 10 listeners a night up to where you are now on 6 terrestrial radio stations, great formats like Odysy Radio, podcasts all over the place. YouTube channel is now, since we've really shifted focus on that, is starting to take off. We just hit, we're still quite small there, but we just hit 16,000 subscribers this week. And I'm pretty proud of that. I never thought we'd get to 10,000, let alone now encroaching on 20,000. And I looked at it and I just thought, you know what, this is cool. And a lot of people along the way, like I said, have asked, hey, Dave, how did you do it? Could you give me some tips? And I'm always willing to share, because I think we need a strong community with strong voices. But there's a bunch of them. I would say the majority of them where you put in your time, you put in your place, and you put in your effort, and you give them everything that you can, and then they go and do the opposite. And then, a few months later, they come back to you. It's not working. What you told me isn't working. Well, that's because you've done nothing that we talked about. Whereas with you guys have been like sponges. You really have. And I appreciate that more than you guys know, because I never mind helping people who are wanting to be successful in this podcast era. And there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a ton of them. And we have to be able to work together in order to make it happen. And I have all the time in the world for you guys. I really do. You're that type of great people that I have no problem working with, and it makes it fun for me. So thank you guys for allowing me to do that.
Well, that means a lot. Appreciate it, man. Really.
Yeah, that means lots to me, Dave.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, bud.
We don't want to, before everybody gets all teary-eyed, Dave, I thank you as well. And I appreciate it. Much love, much love. You know what? When I introduced you, I mentioned about the various experiences that you've had. And here's my question. You can frame this however you like. Many people, they yearn for a contact, they yearn for an experience. There are many researchers that have been out there 15, 20, 30 years, not even seen a Bigfoot, an alien, a UFO craft. What do you think it is about you with your unique experiences that you have way more than the average person? Is there something about you that is drawn to this unknown phenomena?
I don't know. I wish I had a better answer than that, but I honestly don't know, Rob. It is the biggest mystery. It's the biggest heartache. It's the biggest complaint I get. A lot of experiencers, what I've noticed, a lot of experiencers, for some reason, between 2010 and 2015, there was this whole bunch of experiencers who've never had anything happen to them before. All of a sudden, somewhere around there, it just went boom. The light switch went off for a number of people. And I'm not saying 10 or 12. I'm saying thousands of people out there that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, started seeing things. And it wasn't just one thing. It was the whole gamut of paranormal or supernatural or UFO or cryptid. And I remember when I started having a lot of paranormal experiences in 2011, that's when it really started for me in mid-December of 2011. I didn't know any of this stuff, man. Yeah, I watched the television shows. I remember sitting around, we'd go camping with the boys, and I remember always saying to my buddies, you know what? There's 3 things I want to see before I die. I want to see a UFO, I want to see a ghost, and I want to see Sasquatch. I've seen all 3, which is cool, but I never thought I would. I saw my first UFO when I was 21 years old. I worked in a haunted building at that same time. And years later in 2013 is where I had my Sasquatch encounter. So we're coming up 9 years on that. But in 2011, when my entire shift happened, I was 38 years old. I lived a happily boring life, guys. I didn't want it. When I left terrestrial radio in 2007, I left it for good, guys. Like, I wasn't turning back. I was tired of it. I was treated like garbage by my sports director. And I was tired of being beat up. And like a lot of people out there who may not know this about me, I was bullied. I had a career that I loved, and I was bullied out of it. And I knew at that point I had to start doing something for myself. So in 2011, when all of a sudden I went through an ugly divorce in 2010, 2009, 2010. And then in 2011, when all of this started, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know that I was going to start a radio show over it. Guys, when I left terrestrial radio, podcasting was just coming in. I didn't know what a podcast was until 2014. I didn't know that there was this entire digital online format that a person could broadcast on that was out there. Didn't understand it. I was still about turning the dial or pressing the presets on going to the radio station. And sure, I had heard of Sirius XM. I'm a subscriber to them. I'd always wished, man, I wish Coast to Coast AM was on Sirius XM. That way, when I'm out in the mountains, it's a lot clearer. But I had no idea. I really didn't. And I was so naive to it when we started Spaced Out Radio that if I would known then what I know now, I 100% would have never started it. Never started it. I didn't know how many shows there were. I didn't know how many that everybody and their dog had a bloody podcast. I didn't know that there was this entire UFO cult or this entire Bigfoot cult or this entire paranormal cult. Didn't know. Now, when you look at how cutthroat everything is and backstabbing everything is, and, between the charlatans and the liars and the fake career people who are choosing a career on their resume just because it looks good, they're getting television shows and conferences out of it, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't. I think of all the times that the birthdays I've missed, the parties I've missed, the time with family I've missed, the times with friends I've missed, the money it's cost me in order to put this all together. I wouldn't have done it. But now that I'm here, I'm sure as hell glad I did. I really am, because I have met some incredible people like you two gentlemen, even though we've never met in person. You build relationships with people and the fans, and when you're genuine, people take, they want to subscribe. They want They want to hear what you have to say. And to me, I take that very seriously.
You know,
go
it,
ahead,
it's
Tex, go ahead.
to me, being genuine goes a long way with me. You know, with me, and I think anybody that's ever been out in the field with me, everybody that knows me, is pretty much what you see is what you get. You know, I don't polish up real shiny, and that's one thing that I can say about you. You know, and what you're doing, you're genuine. You know,
Try.
and it's unfortunately it's hard to find. You do have those out there that um, the ones that really get me are the ones that have their channel. They get on this platform and they do nothing but beat up others. You know, and it's like you were talking about the bullying. And I'm one that I will take the high road and I'll walk away whenever I can. But you know, I don't mistake my kindness for weakness type thing.
Yes.
You know, and I'm glad you got back into it, and I'm glad you're still here. Because frankly, we wouldn't be where we're at. I mean, you talking about you're not a huge channel. We are a baby. We are an infant as far as channels go. And I get comments all the time. I can't believe y'all guys don't have a bigger following and all this kind of stuff. And it's weird because I look at other channels that don't do nothing but beat other channels up or talk bad about other people, and they've got this huge following. Well, if that's what it takes, it ain't going to happen for us because I'm not going to do it.
The same way. I am completely the same way. And you know, look, there's an audience for everything. That's the beautiful part about the internet. There's an audience for everything. Some people like that. I get I've been on the wrong end of that criticism. And whether it's people saying that I've lied about my experiences to gain numbers, whether I've bought followers for my YouTube channel, and that's the only reason why we have grown so fast, or, you know, that I don't challenge guests enough, and I don't hammer people on the air. I've had it all. But you know what? I stick true. If you know how radio works, and this is something that isn't new to you guys because we had this conversation, but for the rest of the audience, the one thing that I learned when I went to broadcasting school is no matter what you do, you have to have focus. What is your focus going into your brand? So our focus is this. We love the woo. And I have always had this slogan with Spaced Out Radio. We believe everybody. Now, a lot of people don't like that, or they'll say, well, what does that mean? And I'll say, look, I've never stood in your shoes. Who am I to sit there and say you're a liar? You're lying about your experiences. Now, some people are completely blatant that you can tell there's BS. You can just tell. But they're far and few between. The majority of people have had anecdotal evidence happen to them, an anecdotal situation where there is no camera. And the majority of people who scream, where's the proof? Where's that video? Where's that photograph? Well, my answer to that is two things. Number one, when you are seeing something that your brain cannot comprehend, the last thing you think about is, can you just stop for a second, please, so I can grab my camera and take a picture? Example, last year, I went out for firewood. And my buddy Mike is sitting beside me, and we're chatting away going up the logging road. And all of a sudden, I see this thing jump in front of my vehicle about 50 feet. By the time my eyes focused, I realized it was a beautiful giant lynx cat. And I'd never seen one in the pub like that close before. I'd seen one previously, but it was at night. And a lynx is my favorite cat, favorite one, and they're gorgeous. And here I am. I put my vehicle in park, and I'm saying to Mike, "Look at this." And then all of a sudden, after a few seconds, it clicks in. I should take a picture of this. So I'm trying to rush to unlock my phone, and my hands are shaking because I don't want to miss it. And literally, I can see this cat on the road looking at its paw, tapping its wrist like, what the hell are you waiting for? And finally, it was like it shook his head like, you're an idiot, and then walked right in front of the vehicle down into a ditch. Well, now I've got my camera ready. So it's in this ditch. I open up my window and I yell at this cat, "Hey, puss, stop for a second so I can get a picture if you don't mind." He turns, he looks at me. Now I've got this, because I have an iPhone 8, I have this grainy photo of this beautiful cat that I should have been able to photograph clearly. And now I have a lynx squatch, you know, and it pissed me off. But if you put a Sasquatch or a dogman or an alien in front of you, something that isn't supposed to exist in our human reality, and then all of a sudden there it is, you panic.
Yes.
You panic. And the people who are screaming, "Well, you have no proof." Well, I do have proof because I was scared. Now it's anecdotal proof, but this leads to number 2. If I had, and we'll go through this tonight because for your listeners, you're on our show tonight, both of you. And we're going to go through anecdotal evidence tonight as well. But then you get the crowd, which leads to number 2, which is if you have that photo, if you have that video, it's fake, it's
Right.
CGI, it's BS, that's cropped, that's been planted in there. I've already tested the picture and you can see the overlay, and in the meantime, all you're trying to say is, guys, you want evidence? This is what I caught. Right? And this is why I say on my show, if I ever had that $1 million video of Sasquatch, like the next Patterson Gimlin film, I would never release it to the public. Never. I mean, you look at the hell that Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson went through. Well, more so Gimlin because he's still alive, but 55 years of hell. And then when he finally has enough, he says, "You know what? Fine. It's fake. It's fake." And people, "Aha, I told you so, you liar." Well, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And this is what I hate about this field. It's one of my biggest complaints because we want what we want, and when we get it, we don't believe it or we have to tear it down. We're not allowed good things. In the UFO world, I know a lot of your cryptid people follow the UFO world as well. The name Luis Elizondo is quite familiar. This is a guy who ran the Pentagon program from 2007 or 2008 through 2012. And this is a guy who's come out, and he can only say so much because of his NDAs with the government, non-disclosure agreements. All right. And if he says something, well, he'll go to jail. Maybe more. At the best, jail. And we have, as a UFO community, have been waiting decades for someone on the inside to come out and say, this phenomena is real. Here's some of the evidence we brought forward. Here's what I've seen. Here's what I know. Here's what I can tell you. And what do? We rip the guy a new butthole so much that he's now probably within the next 6 to 10 months leaving ufology because of death threats, because of stalking, because of online bullying and trolling. A documentary was made about him that literally doxed him, his personal financial records, his wife, his children. This is why we're not allowed nice things, guys. Not everybody is like us. you know? So getting back to the whole radio side of things, when you asked me about it, and I said the word focus, our focus on Spaced Out Radio is we believe everybody because we've never stood in your shoes. A lot of people don't like that. But here's the thing. The majority of our audience, they want the stories. All right? That's why they stay up late at night. They want the stories of Bigfoot. They want the stories of Dogman and coming and having a close encounter with a near-death experience or aliens or paranormal. And that's what we deliver. We're not here to hammer people. We're not here to make somebody look foolish. Now, look, there are times when hard questions need to be asked. All right? And I want to preface to everybody who's never heard of us before or maybe doesn't know the inside story, I'm not a researcher. I'm not like Tex or Rob. I'm a journalist by trade, and I'm an experiencer. I know how to talk on one of these, and that's it. When I go out into the field, like this weekend, I'll go out looking for Sasquatch this weekend. Guess how many cameras I have? 0 outside of my phone. Because I'm not there I'm so amateur. I'm not there to prove anything to the Bigfoot community or the Dogman community or the UFO community. I'm there to absorb what I can experience. Because when I'm out in the field, there's only one mission, and that mission is Dave Scott. It's not about Spaced Out Radio. It's not about enhancing the phenomena more. I'm there to learn about what happened to me, why it's happened to me, and how can I make it happen a little bit more openly and frequently. You know, but the key thing is, like with podcasts or whatever, is the focus. And when you don't have focus and you're running around in circles, that's where we have troubles. That's where people rely on the hammering texts and the bullying and the berating and cutting people down, rather than just going out there and having fun and having a good time, you know. But hey, some people want that, and good on them. If that's what they find entertaining, if that's what they want to pay for, go for it. I'll stick with guys like Bigfoot Rob Tex, Duke from World Bigfoot Radio, and many others who are just trying to bring that information forward, and I like being the conduit to it.
You know,
go ahead, Rob.
You know, Dave, real quick, it was what you had just brought up. I'm in 100% agreement with. You know, the very first time I had an encounter with Sasquatch, I made a dumb video. I had no idea how to put out a video. And like the first 7 or 8 comments as I go through YouTube, right, look at the comments, was, how come you didn't get a picture? And, you know, it just about, I was like, yep, I knew I was going to look like a fool. And I got all depressed. Then I reached out to some other people in the field that helped me through that. And then now that I've been doing this for a while now with Tex, it's so unfortunate. There are many people that are not going to come forward because of the ridicule that you were talking about. There are so many more people that have experiences, and I don't care if it's UFOs, it's Bigfoot, a cryptid, a ghost. They don't come forward because of that. And that saddens me. And that's why we do what we do today. We try to be as open as we can. Much like you, Dave, I'll believe a story. So will Tex what you tell me. We didn't walk in your shoes. That's why I'm glad what we do today. And fortunately for me, I ran into people like Tex, Duke, that said, hey, Rob, you're not crazy. Go ahead. You're going to get the ridicule. But guess what? Somebody has to do it. And for all those people out there that have these experiences that don't want to come forward, there's certainly a place for it on all of our platforms. And Dave Scott's one of them, as well as us and Duke and all the rest that are out there. So I do appreciate that. And Tex, you had a point you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, you know, you were talking about the whole taking the picture thing and the damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. You know, because if you take a picture and you get a link squatch or a blob squatch, you know, it's like, oh, well, that's just another bush. You can't prove nothing with that. And when you do get the money shot, like you said, the first thing they do is call it fake. So it's like, what do you expect us to do as researchers? You want us to put this stuff out here, and when we do, you condemn it. Either way.
Well, Tex, you bring up a very good point that I think a lot of people need to understand. Look, if you want, and I learned this early because I tried to surround myself with some high quality people. I look at somebody like David Weatherly or Ross Allison or you guys or people of that ilk where you're much smarter than me. But the one thing that I have learned through all of this, guys, is this. If you take a photo, give the person the original. That's one thing Butch Witkowski, God rest his soul, taught me. If you take a photo, just send me the photo. All right? I will do the zooming in. I will do the distorting of colors. I will do everything that I have to do to manipulate that photo to prove whether it's real or fake. Not me personally. I'm talking in Butch's terms at this point. Okay. Don't send me this blurry thing that looks like a pareidolia face in between branches that is so zoomed in, you can't pixelate it anymore. If you think you have something, send the original. And if you have the original, okay, and let's say you did capture that video or that photo, don't just ship it anywhere and everywhere. Ronald Murphy, the crypto guru, and I, a number of years ago, had this guy reach out to us. He reached out to me first. He was from Manitoba. And this guy literally had fairies all over his property, including he had the body of a fairy. And I got the guru involved because he knows more about that than anybody I know. And Guru and I had a phone call with this guy, and we pleaded with him, stay away from the community. You will be eaten up, and you will be your evidence that you have, which was absolutely incredible. Like, I'm talking like photos of fairies. It's like you guys looking at me and me looking at you, where they're bright and they're pink and they're green, and you could see the wings, you could see the body, the legs. It looked like Tinkerbell. And you could tell that the photographs weren't photoshopped. And then the body. Well, what does this guy do? Remember I said, don't do the people who do the polar opposite. He doesn't believe Guru and I. He thinks Guru and I are trying to hold him back. Within 3 months, the guy is gone from the community. Never to be heard from again. Don't even know how to get a hold of him because he was eaten alive. Like the community turned on him like a bunch of piranhas on fresh meat. And here we have all of this beautiful evidence that could have been something, which has gone to the wasteland now because this guy got verbally assaulted for trying to come out. And we forewarned him, but hey, to each their own.
And another thing, when we're talking about the evidence and people putting it out there and stuff like that, I think another thing when we were talking about people don't want to come forward with their stories and all that kind of stuff. Another thing that I've seen and I think goes on a lot is, and I try to get this across a lot, that you don't have to have this fantastical, huge, Bigfoot drove off in my truck kind of story. The encounters, and I call them mundane encounters, but there is no mundane encounter. But the ones that you just see, run across the road and scratch its butt, whatever, those are probably more important than the grandioso ones that we get, because we can attach data points to those, and the more we get, the more data that is. So if you have one of these sightings, if you just saw it pop up out of a wheat field and run into the trees, that was my first Bigfoot sighting. There's nothing grandiose, so exciting about that. He didn't roar at me. He didn't throw nothing at me or nothing like that. But that tells, if you really break that encounter down, it tells a lot about the behavior. This thing was watching us. It thought it was getting away with something, and that type of thing. So, and I fear that people don't come forward with those kind of encounters because they don't think anybody's going to pay any attention to them.
Very
and
true.
They need to understand that we need those encounters. One, because we can gather data points from them, and two, it adds to all this anecdotal evidence that we have, so it helps our cause. These
It very much does.
These I don't want to say they're made up, but I know there's people out there that embellish their encounters. I could have very well embellished the one that I had. It's like my dogman encounter. He ran across the road and dove across the fence. That's what he did. But I could have I could have made that so much more, interesting and terrifying and all this kind of stuff. But why? You saw something that is not supposed to exist. You had the rare opportunity to witness one of these magnificent creatures. That is enough. And we want to hear those. So anybody that's listening out there, if you have one of these mundane or regular encounters, or however you want to call them, come forward with them. And you can reach out to people like us. You can reach out to Dave. Don't think just because you reach out to us, we're going to try to have you on the show. Those are data points for us. And if this traumatized you, we're going to talk to you about it. That's why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to get that out there, and because really one of the main driving forces behind our channel is to get awareness out there and to help people,
No, and I agree with you. We need as many anecdotal stories as possible. They are just as important today as they ever were, especially today, is because if we can get a quality researcher out to your area quickly, there are data points there that we could figure out. Like for you in the wheat field or the cornfield, wherever yours was, Tex, how high was the corn? If the corn was 6 feet tall at that time, which we could measure, and this thing is sticking out head and shoulders above, well, you're dealing with an 8-foot creature. If it's above the chest, you're dealing with probably a 9 to 10-foot creature. How big were its strides? How many strides did it take to get into the trees? If it took 5 strides, then there was probably 10 feet in between strides. If the forest was 50 feet away, that's pertinent information.
Yeah,
it's not about hair samples. It's not about scat or footprints. Footprints are a bonus. Everything like that is a bonus. But look, I understand the skeptic's point of view here, okay? Because I think we all, in the back of our minds, we love talking about this stuff. But trust me when I say this, people. I've talked to Rob and Tex long enough, or somebody like Duke from World Bigfoot Radio, or Nate Rudd, or whoever it may be. You have to have your skeptical hat on first and foremost. All right. If you can't be your biggest skeptic, you're not doing enough. And people will say, well, isn't that a contradiction, Dave, to the whole spaced out radio? We believe everybody. Well, no, because we're hoping that they've already gone through that skepticism themselves,
right,
and are now relaying the story. But for all of us, we need to be skeptical. At my Bigfoot site, here's something I've never said before. I have a gifting site. And at one of my gifting sites, about 2 times ago when I was there was a tree that was woven along the ground, like a small branch that was woven on the ground in between the other trees that were standing there. And it was kind of tough to pull out. But knowing how heavy the snow gets around here, I can't sit there and say, well, a Sasquatch did this, even though it's at my Sasquatch gifting site. I have to think, okay, in the winter, we get a lot of Arctic winds, and they blow 30, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. All right. We get a lot of heavy snow. So if you have a heavy snowpack in the trees combined with an Arctic wind, that can make the trees do something a little bit different than you wouldn't expect. So you have to be your own worst critic. But you're right. We have to take the anecdotal evidence just as seriously today as we did before the internet and before all this technology came out. And for some reason, and I don't understand why this is in this entire field of the phenomena, the evidence we have on Sasquatch would convict somebody every day of murder if they killed somebody, just on the anecdotal evidence. Yet for us, who don't have law degrees, who don't have science degrees, who don't have journalism degrees, we eat it up like it's all bullshit. Pardon my language. We eat it up like that. Yet if we had a proper judge and jury on these cases, whether it's Patterson Gimlin or whether it's something that Duke from World Bigfoot Radio caught, likelihood of it being proven in existence is 100%.
I totally agree, and that is something we've talked about before. I mean, Bigfoot would be in jail, if we had him in court. But there's so many people that just, for some reason, they just want to put those blinders on and walk through life. And I'll never understand that. But I do. That being said, I do understand. Like my wife, I try to take her down to Brown Springs with me. She won't even let me drive down the road to get to Brown Springs. Okay. Because, and she's like, I don't know what you saw. But if that's out there, I don't want to know about it, because she would not feel comfortable, because we love to go camping. We love to go fishing together. Okay. We went fishing on our honeymoon, for God's sake. We love to fish. So, that would ruin that for her, just like it has for so many people that have had those experiences and are scared to go back out there. I was that way when I had my dogman encounter. Kerry Arnold was that way when he had his encounter. Bigfoot Michigan Rob was that way when he had his encounter. You get, it sets you back on your heels. I got to tell you, I tell Kerry this every time I talk to him, and I know that Kerry's the type of guy that, well, I don't whatever, but I'm proud of the distance he's came with his encounter, because when I first met Kerry 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't have got him out in the woods at gunpoint, and now, he's out there with Marzasky in the middle of the Florida Everglades looking for this thing. He doesn't do that. He's like you. He's not a researcher. He doesn't claim to be a researcher. He puts people's stories out there, and he's put together, these outings and stuff. And a lot of people, Kerry's a very polarizing figure, but that's good. I mean, you either love him or you hate him. I love him, but I've known him for a long time. I know him better than most in the community. And, it's like Rob, when we first started going over his encounter, I was the skeptic, because I was like, well, this could have been that. This could have been this. This could have been that. You saw what you saw, but the stuff that he described happening, I'm like, well, this can be, explained naturally. This can be explained naturally. So, I don't think this thing was a superpowered demon shifting thing that you think it was. And, we've talked about that time and time and time again. But getting back to my point, which I've lost already. But when you talk about believing everybody, I'm not going to discount anybody's encounter. I'm just not going to do it because I wasn't there. They can do the same thing with me. What makes my encounter more believable than theirs? Nothing. I've never been mind spoke to. I've got good friends that have. Just because I haven't experienced doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing, Tex, that our community is not very cognizant of. What is proof? Right? What is proof? My proof is different from Rob's proof, is different from Tex's proof, different from everybody listening to this proof. I don't need proof that aliens are real or UFOs are here. I've seen them with my own eyes. If you choose not to believe me, that's your choice. I have my proof to convince me. I have my proof that, in my opinion, God is real. Because when I was having a very spiritual moment, I felt his hand on my shoulder. I have proof that the angel of death is real because I saw it in my mother's eyes. And then I channeled him a couple of hours later, and he told me how to keep my mom alive. And 10 years later, going on 11, my mother is still alive. So what is proof? Do we need it to be the president of the United States to stand at the podium, say, "Lady, my fellow Americans, UFOs and aliens are real, or Bigfoot is real, or the Loch Ness Monster is real, Champ is real, Dogman's real"? Do we need that? So in reality, what is proof? Well, people will say, well, we need to scientifically explain. No, we don't need to scientifically explain. Science will prove it to the world or disprove it to the world. But look how slow out of the gate they have taken to get into these subjects. We have one researcher, maybe two, who are looking into Sasquatch, who work for colleges. We have a number of UFO interest. We have a ton of UFO interest now happening from the scientific community because they're all jumping on the bandwagon the last 4 years to what the government has said, that the phenomena is real. Yet you take someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who has the exact same education as Avi Loeb, but he has a more popular position, who says, this UFO and alien stuff is just crap. But Avi Loeb, who is an astrophysicist for Harvard, says Oumuamua that flew by a couple of years ago was an alien craft, or potentially an alien craft, and refused to rule it out, much to the chagrin of his colleagues. And now look at him. He started the Galileo Project on proving the existence that we have been visited, or we're going to find something that is out there. So the question to everybody that you need to ask, it's much like being your own worst skeptic, is what is proof? And that's the hard one, because everyone is different. And to throw another caveat on top of that, I was talking to somebody who is very close within the U.S. government with these subjects. And he threw a wrench in my life. And this was just about 3 weeks ago. And he told me, he goes, what if the phenomena is everyone? Because think about this, guys. how many times have you guys heard Bigfoot stories or dogman stories or UFO stories where, say, you're in a group of 4 or 5 people or more, and half of them see it, but the other half don't?
And Dave,
Yet you're all looking at the same thing.
Real quickly too, Dave, I like to retain that thought, but we're at the mark where we have to say goodbye to our Odyssey listeners and iHeartRadio listeners. We will continue on live on YouTube, and we're going to come up on a break that we're going to take here. And Dave, I want to continue that. And when we get back, we've been talking a lot about fact and anecdotal evidence and the like, but I think our listeners would like to hear your Bigfoot encounter that you've had as well when we come back for the second hour of the show. So with that, Tex, can you hear me?
Four minutes to go, folks. 4 minutes. Three minutes. We're almost there. Two-minute warning, guys. 2-minute warning. One minute. 1 minute.
Hello. Hey, Dave, man, I'm sorry for that kind of awkward, with this trying to figure in with this, the radio cuts and they got to do their thing. And so didn't want to interrupt you with that, but,
You
we're
did
trying
perfect.
we're moving along. We're moving along. And so I do apologize for that on this side.
Don't apologize, man. That's radio. It happens.
It
Let
does
me up.
happen.
You have to.
It happens. I know. It's a skill you have to acquire, and we'll get it with time. And I do appreciate you coming on, Dave Scott from Space Style Radio. We've been talking a lot of
The most important signal you can learn. Wrap it up.
yeah, right. It's funny. I watch the show like all the time, and I watch, but when you're doing it live yourself, it comes with time. It comes with time. We were talking earlier about anecdotal evidence, the proof, and everything else. People that are skeptical about whatever encounters someone may or may not had. Why don't we tell a little story? Because I know a lot of people come in have not heard much about your experience with the Sasquatch, and it's an interesting story. I like it, and a lot of our viewers probably have not. And if you'd like to get into that for us here, to start it off here in the second part of the show.
Which one do you want to hear? Where I actually saw the creature?
Yes, I think that'd be a good one.
Okay. So I was working with I call him my personal guru. His name is Pascal. And Pascal was really opening me up to the entire phenomena. And I was very comfortable with the paranormal. I was very comfortable with channeling, thanks to him. And we were out one day and he goes, "What else do you want to see?" And I said, "I really want to see Sasquatch this year. This is 2013." And he goes, "Okay, well, let's manifest it. He goes, "When do you think you're going to see it?" I said, "I get the feeling it's going to be in July." Well, July comes along. I don't spend a lot of time out in nature in that month. Don't see anything. Okay, well, we were wrong there. And at the time, we were hanging out with a couple. I'll keep their names out of it, but they lived in Mission, British Columbia, and they had a 10-acre ranch, and on top of one of the mountains, and on their street was only two houses. It was their 10 acres, and it was an elderly couple who lived next door who had 6.5 acres, and both properties were horseshoed by forest. And so one day, the guy in the house, he goes, "Hey, I want to walk back into the forest. I want to take you to where I had an odd encounter when I was a kid." So I'm like, "Okay." So he's explaining the story to me, and we're walking this deer trail. We're probably 400 or 500 yards from his house. And he was explaining how when he was a kid, because the property had been in his family for 40 plus years at that point, how him and his buddy were playing cops and robbers in the back trees. And he caught his buddy, and they were kind of huffing and puffing, debating, what they were going to play next, if they wanted to continue or walk back to the house, when all of a sudden they heard this whoosh and then wing, and they looked, and they were standing by a tree, and there was an old-fashioned arrow that went right in between them and stuck into the tree. Like, we're talking not a fiberglass arrow. We're talking like an old stick type arrow with real feathers that a First Nations person would have used 100 years ago. And that scared them and they ran back to the house. So he wanted to show me where this happened. So we walk back into this field, and like I said, we're about 500 yards into the forest from his house. And we come across this tree that's probably, 8, 10 inches, maybe 12 inches around in circumference. And it snapped at 8 feet high. And the bark peeled off with it. So the tree is laying on the ground and the bark is ripped off. And you could see, that this thing was snapped. And I kind of make a joke because I don't know really anything about Bigfoot at this time. I make a joke in my extremely amateur way. Bigfoot has been known to break trees. And the guy I'm with, I mean, he's 6'2". He's a pretty tall guy. I'm only 5'9". And he stands up on this stump and he reaches up. He goes, yeah, this is about 8 feet. And so we started thinking, okay, well, we haven't had any windstorms lately. We haven't had any real battering storms that would have, that the British Columbia lower mainland area gets because it's a natural rainforest there that a lot of people don't know about. When we think rainforest, we think Brazil. But the whole like Oregon or the northern part of California right through British Columbia on the west coast is all natural rainforest. So we were a little perplexed by this. And then all of a sudden we started getting that feeling that we were being watched. And we started looking around. We weren't even thinking Sasquatch. We were thinking bear and we were thinking mountain lion. And so we were kind of on alert. We're kind of looking around, and all of a sudden, due north of us, 12 o'clock on a clock, about 100 feet away, there's this big fir tree, and it was casting quite a shadow because it was a sunny day. It was casting quite a shadow underneath, and we could all of a sudden see this peering, and it looked like you could see the shape of a head and a shoulder. And then it went back, and then it came out again, and then went back. And it kept doing this. At times, it had its face right out where you could almost make out the markings. Like you couldn't see the eyes because the eyes were dark and it's daylight, so you're not going to get any glow. But you could kind of see light facial features of like cheekbones and the nose, but it was still quite far away where it was difficult to see. And it would pull back. And then all of a sudden you would just see the shoulder. Then you'd see the shoulder dip in and then the head come out and then the shoulders out, and this went on for about 5 minutes. Now, the people who owned the property, they had one rule. And that was they wanted the phenomena to be extremely comfortable with contact with us. So there were a few things that were not allowed on the property when we were looking. Number 1, no alcohol. Number 2, no drugs of any sort, including marijuana. And not that any of us smoked it anyways. And number 3, no photographs or cameras. This was for our eyes only. And I respected that because we wanted the phenomena to be as comfortable as possible. And trust me, guys, the phenomena that was on that property, we've all heard of the ESETI Ranch down in southern Washington state. This was identical to what was going on there. All right. They had fairies. They had dark shadow figures. They had ghosts. They had UFOs. They had Sasquatch. They had aliens. It was everything there. And it was phenomenal. And rarely a night went by where we didn't hear or experience something. And when there was nothing going on, we would be like, really? Like, what? It gave us a night off? If I could have afforded to buy that property, I would have bought that property in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Because it was so extraordinary there. And unfortunately, they sold it a number of years ago. But it was extraordinary what was going on there. So at the time, we said goodbye to the first one. We literally waved at it. We put our hands up and we said, thank you for showing us. We're going to go now and leave you alone. So I go and I'm facing the creature like I'm looking at you guys. I turn this way to the right, and at about 75 feet from me, I see this tree branch shaking at about 1:30. So if this guy's at noon, at about 1:30, I see this tree branch shaking. Like, and it's shaking vigorously. It's not like it's just a quick, like a wind would be blowing it. It's like, let's get the cherries off this tree and shake that branch as hard as we can. And that's where I saw the second one. And I got a full right side profile and from the waist up, and a full back profile right to the top of the head. It never looked at me. It never looked back, but it shook, went right through where that tree branch was shaking. And I yelled at my buddy, there's a second one. Did you see it? And unfortunately, when I looked, this thing's 75 feet away from me. My buddy is now 40 feet away from me because he, tall, long legs. He's walking down the trail to go back, and he thinks I'm right behind him. Right? I got scared. Not scared that I was going to be attacked, but holy cow, I'm all alone here. And the distance between the first guy and the second guy is probably 50 feet. Okay. There's no way that first guy could have made it to where the second guy was in that 2 seconds. No way. But it makes me, the more I've looked at that situation, the more that I have noticed that, or thought of, that there was a third one there, because something had to be shaking that tree branch. Something had to. We saw the movement of that tree branch, which lets me believe there was a third. And we just walked away. I mean, a lot of people will be like, well, why didn't you chase after it? Well, first of all, it's big. Very big. Like at minimum 350, 400 pounds. And when you see the shoulders on this thing, okay, and there's no neck. It went literally from shoulders to this pointed head. And I was like, you got to be kidding me here. You got to be kidding me. And that was my first Sasquatch encounter. And now on the farm after that, we had other experiences. They had a few ponds around where at night you would hear splashing. Well, those little ponds, and when I say little, I'm saying, 12 feet wide, maybe 50 feet long, tiny. There was no fish in those ponds. There was no beavers. There was no otters because we're on top of a mountain and there's no waterway or creek to get there. Okay, just ponds. Sure, there was frogs and everything. But when you hear major splashes, like something is taking a 50-pound rock and throwing it into the water, and you hear this giant, deep splash, or it sounds like something is taking a giant stick and slamming it on the water, that's what it was sounding like. We would get those. So a little bit later, all right, like the First Nations in my area, they believe that Sasquatch is either a shapeshifter or an interdimensional type creature. And some of them believe it's a wild man. But in this case, what happened next was a little odd, because we used to do perimeter walks around the house and around the property. And so there was the couple who owned the property, my guru Pascal and myself, and we walked way to the back of the tree line by the forest. We never walked in. And as we were coming back on our right, there's a bunch of like blackberry bushes and and shrubs and trees that have overgrown, and the bushes are 10, 12, 14 feet high. And then you'd go down a little hill, maybe 20 feet, where one of the ponds were. And as we're walking by this pond, we're hearing splash, splash. And we know right there that it's not a beaver. It's not a beaver smacking its tail in the water. This is something big. The sound of the splash was very deep and heavy. And we continue walking towards the house. And I kept getting this feeling like we were being followed. And we get about halfway past the house, and I stopped and I turned. And behind the house, just to the right, probably from the corner of the house to this giant cherry tree, was probably 65 feet, 70 feet. And they had this big old black cherry tree. And I'm looking beside this cherry tree, and there's pixelation that's standing from the ground to about 8-10 feet up. And I stopped the other three and I said, "Can you see that beside the cherry tree?" And they said, "See what?" I said, "There's pixelation." Now, the lady who is with us, she saw it. Pascal and the other gentleman did not. Well, why are two of us seeing this and two of us not? This is what we talked about in hour one, about the phenomena allowing certain people in a group to see things, but not allowing others in the group to see the same thing when they're looking in the same direction. Well, the other two got frustrated, who couldn't see anything, and they decided, hey, let's just continue our walk. We're going to go to the front of the house, to the road, where across the road there's trees and there's usually a lot of shadow people in there and fairies. And we get to the front of the house. So this is about 20 seconds later. We get to the front of the house. And that's where we got roared at from behind the house. And now this thing roaring at us was coming from that exact area where the pixelation was. And I have never been instantaneously so freaked out in my life than hearing that. And if you've never heard a Sasquatch roar, it literally sounds like a lion roaring combined with an animal being ripped apart. But here's the interesting part about it, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this before, but in that area where they were kind of in this ravine of the mountains, a lot of the animals that you would hear around would echo. And this had no echo. It was strange. We'd hear the goats, the horses, you'd hear their echoes, but this had no echo. So we did what anybody would do at that time. We ran into the house. Right?
Yeah, I've been screamed at a few times. I've been whooped at, been growled at a lot. Probably the most disturbing thing that I've ever heard was probably a scream, because it sounded, the only way I can describe it is what you would think a banshee would sound like. And it was about 2:30 in the morning, and it had to be a couple of 100 yards off. And we were down in the bottoms, river bottoms, and I never thought about it, but it moved, and then it screamed again. It moved probably 500 yards and then screamed again. And I never thought about it, but now that you mention it, no, it never echoed down through the bottoms. And, like we would do a call every once in a while and it would echo. So that is strange.
Mm-hmm. So this led to me moving, in 2015, I moved north into central British Columbia, or near central British Columbia. And our entire town is surrounded by forest.
Right.
And I met one of my first friends here. His name is Mike. And Mike and I hit it off right off the bat. And I happened to be, this was 2016, October of 2016. And I happened to be, it was so coincidental. I happened to be at a paranormal conference, speaking at a paranormal conference, the first one I ever spoke at down in Washington State. And I just happened to be talking to the Bigfoot researcher who was speaking there when my phone rang, and it's my buddy Mike. And he says, dude, you're not going to believe this. So what? He goes, I'm out grouse hunting on one of the logging roads, which we call the 900 road. And he goes, I have to piss. He goes, so I crawl out of my vehicle. He goes, I whip down my zipper. I start taking a pee. And while I'm peeing, I look down to the ground and there's a track of a Sasquatch there.
Mhm.
And he measured it. It was 18 inches by 9 inches.
That's a big
Massive
boy.
track. All right. So he quickly does what anybody would do. He, pinches it off, moves to another area because he doesn't want his urine running into that track. Okay. And goes and finishes peeing and then takes a picture of it. Right? Not of his pee, but of the track, and sends it to me. So 5 days later, I'm finally back in town and I got a day off from work. We drive out there and he shows me the print. And that was the first print I've ever seen. Now, if anybody has been on a logging road, like a true logging road that has been compacted, that dirt is like harder than cement. You don't even get tire tracks when you go on those roads. It is concrete. All right. And for this thing, and we're talking, I'm not talking a half-ton pickup or a 1-ton pickup. We're talking, you don't even get tracks from semi trucks that are carrying, 20, 10 tons of logs, 15 tons of logs. You don't get that. There's no tracks. You may see the tread of the tires spitting up the dirt, but there's no actual tracks when it's dry. So, okay, we go back to the spot. My buddy Mike is there. My neighbor Tony, who has an interest in this stuff, he comes with, and we go see it. And so we then decided we're going to go look in the surrounding areas to see if we can find more tracks. So about 200 feet into the forest, we find another track. Tony does. And this track is about 15 inches by 5 inches. And we're like, holy cow, there's 2 of them here. Once again, right foot. Both of them, right footprints. Okay. So that's when we decided we needed to set up a gifting area. And that's what we did. So fast forward, July of 2017, our area goes through a major forest fire. Like my entire town was evacuated for 14, 15 days.
Wow.
And during that time, I met another friend named Mark Spender, who people recognize him in my chat room as Timber Hunter. And Mark worked with Tony, who found the track. And during the forest fires, while I was still broadcasting, Mark was paying attention to what we were doing, and he kind of fell in love with the show. And the day we got back into town and we were allowed back, Mark pulled up into my driveway to introduce himself. And we literally from that first hour in, we've been best friends. And he's just that kind of guy. But Mark is also, when we talked about it, he's like, I don't really believe in this Sasquatch thing, man. He goes, and I said, really? He goes, why? I said, why? He goes, look, Dave, he goes, when I lived on Vancouver Island, I was a hunting guide. I was paid to track down mountain lions, and wolves. I've been a hunter since I was 8 years old. He goes, I see everything in the forest, and I've never come across something like this. He goes, if it's out there, I would have seen it. And Mark is so smart, guys. I remember, just as an example, where we were walking through this area, we were walking through this mossy part, and we're always, and you guys know, when you're walking through the forest, you're always you have your eyes looking forward, but they're looking down at the same time in order to see if you see anything anomalous. So I'm walking, and Mark's like, wow, the wild horses must have been here recently. I'm like, how do you know? And I'm looking, he goes, the tracks. And I'm looking on the ground, and I'm like, where's the tracks? And he goes, look between your legs. And there was about an inch of that moss that was rounded. That's all he needed, was an inch of sight, that the rounding of the hoof. And he goes, that's how I know. And I was, where? I had to get within like 6 inches of this damn thing to see it. Right? But that's how eagle-eyed he is. So I said, Mark, I'm going to take you to the track, to where the tracks are. He's like, okay. So in between that, we had some rain. It softened up the dirt. I showed him where the original track was, but you couldn't see it anymore because somebody had driven over it and put some mud in that area. And then we went into the forest where it was still pretty dry. And the original second print, the 15-inch print that we saw, was surrounded by moss. So what happened was, through the summer, as the forest dried out, the print in the clay type of dirt hardened, and the moss, which was protecting it before, had now shriveled up in dryness, and the print was right there. Oh, wow. So I take Mark in there, and I say to Mark, there's the print. He kneels down onto one leg, and I still have pictures of it on my phone, and all he can say for about 15 minutes is, I can't believe this. What the hell is this? Mm-hmm. This is unbelievable. What the hell is this? And I'm laughing. I'm laughing at this point because I'm like, gotcha, MFer. You know? And finally, he stands up and he's like, after taking a bunch of photos, he's like, I can't believe this. I've never seen anything like this before. And I just said, welcome to the world of Sasquatch.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so a couple weeks later, we set up the gifting site, or I show him the gifting site, and we go back there. And in our areas, much like Tex, where you go in your areas, I don't worry about Sasquatch. I worry about all the other animals. And I don't have my firearms license. Mark does. So when we go in there, we go in armed. Okay. But the first thing we do before we go in armed is we always let them know, like I'll talk very loudly and I'll say, hey, any animals move back. We are armed. We do not want to hurt you. Sasquatch, we are armed, but please know that this weapon is not for you. This is just to protect us from the bears, the cougars, or anything that becomes aggressive. But we will not raise any arms to you. We always put that out there just in case. So we go back to the print, and Mark is on my left and I'm on the right. And while we're there, when your eyes just, no matter what, you focus on one area, you expect to see something there, and there's never anything there. My eyes just kept on going down this sight trail for about 150 feet. And Mark is looking to the left, and we're just kind of putting out the intentions. Okay, guys, we're here if you want to come. And then all of a sudden, somewhere way to Mark's left, we hear 3 heavy footsteps. Now, could be anything. Never mind Sasquatch. Could be anything. Could be a bear. Could be a 1,600 pound moose. Okay, that caught our scent and started slapping the ground. Okay, you have to think logically.
Right.
And, or maybe it was our friend. We don't know. But a couple seconds after that, where I was looking, I just kind of went, come on, guys. I know something is over there. I'm trusting my intuition here. Give me a sign. And right from that far area, I got nature's security alarm, which, for what people don't know, there's 2 of them or 3 of them. You have ravens, you have crows, and you have squirrels. Well, this was a squirrel because the way it started, it's a little yipping. And it was like something in that area pointed up or made some movement to that squirrel in the tree to set that squirrel off, to let me know that I was right, that it was there. And previous to that, when we heard those 3 big footsteps, Mark had a shotgun with him, and he slowly and loudly cocked his gun, just so whatever it was there knew metal sound, not good, not familiar, because animals don't go where, if they hear something unfamiliar, they go the opposite direction. They can be used to people's voices, but if they hear something that they can't explain, they're not curious animals. That's a red flag for an animal to say, "Oh, I got to get out of here." Outside of the odd curious bear or Sasquatch. So when Mark and I still laugh at how slowly and loudly he cocked his shotgun that day. But that squirrel, man, it tripped me out because I called it into nature. I'm like, come on, give us a sign. And right way back there where I was looking, man, like far back, that's where that squirrel was. And all of a sudden he went nuts. So that was kind of cool.
That is cool. I mean,
when the dust settles, and I don't know when it's going to happen, all the madness and stuff going on. But I think it's going to. It's on my bucket list to get up there in your neck of the woods.
Doors open.
And I think it's phenomenal up there. One, it's beautiful, and there's a few things on my bucket list. Of course, Pacific Northwest is on, Canada's on it, and LBL's on it. But I don't know what is the name of that island that they've got all those Bigfoot out on?
There's Vancouver Island, which has a lot of sightings, and there's some little islands in there. And Thomas Seawood, who's a Sasquatch researcher, First Nations descent, he has an island that he calls Sasquatch Island, which it's an island that isn't very disturbed. I don't believe it's populated. It's very small. It's a historic site for First Nations. So they don't, and there's a First Nations burial ground on there. So they don't allow a lot of people on there. But Thomas will take tours there, and it's like a Sasquatch highway. I mean, there's people who claim, like, once you get up that high up north in the island, you start getting the chain of islands that are going on there. And there's people who claim that they have seen Sasquatch swimming between the islands. Because they're not far. Okay. Which is kind of weird considering, there's a lot of basking sharks in those areas. And for people who know, I mean, basking sharks are the second largest shark next to a tiger shark, or not a tiger shark, a whale shark.
But they won't bother you, basking sharks.
No, they won't. But they're still pretty intimidating if you got a 37 shark and you're anything swimming in the water and you see this giant mouth open.
Yes.
Right.
And Dave is allergic to sharks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, none of that, man. None of that.
I had a little encounter with a shark down on the Texas Gulf, down in the Gulf of Mexico. I was surf fishing, and what I would do, there was 2 or 3 foot swells coming in, and I'd wait it out to about chest deep. And when I would catch a swell and go up on the swell, then that's when I would cast, so I could get further out. And I was riding a swell, and I had just casted, so my feet were off the ground, right? And the swell comes up in front of me, and I see this about 10-foot black shadow, and this fin cut the inside of this wave, right? He's inside the wave, inside the swell. I gotta tell you, brother, you couldn't have drove a stick pin in my butt with a sledgehammer.
No way, man.
My feet hit the ground. This fat boy started backpedaling. And
no way.
I stepped on something. It felt like a tennis ball. And then something shot out of the water behind me. And I didn't know what it was, but I do now, but what I did, I stepped on a ray and it shot up out of the water. I thought I'd done been had, boy. So yeah,
a shark going after a ray and Tex is in between.
Yeah.
No, never. See, that's just, there's no reason to go into the water, man. No reason. Us get me started on that. Look, I dislike sharks. I have a healthy fear because I'm a meal. Okay. Us 3 gentlemen right here, we are 3 individual meals for a shark. Okay. We're not wasted around here like little pixies going into the water and get wet in the salt water. No, man. We are meals. Well, see, it doesn't matter. Sharks, barracuda, it doesn't matter.
I don't know if you know this. And I've been diving since I was 14. And I actually did it professionally for a while. I was an inspector on a dam, on a refit project for a freshwater dam up here or down here. And I've had some pretty harrowing experiences. I've seen one of the big catfish that they talk about, stuff like that. So it's I love the water, and I love being underneath it. It's a whole new world. But,
it's funny too, because my favorite movie is Jaws, right? And but when I seen that movie, I was like, yep. And I do love the water, but I tell you what, after I saw that movie, I had a hard time going in my pool. And Dave, we're coming up pretty over an hour and a half now. One thing I'd like to ask you, with your awesome story you just told everybody, and I know you've got another one, we'll save that for another time. But yourself being in the radio business, you've spoken to a lot of researchers, a lot of experiencers, and you yourself with Sasquatch have had your experience one or two. So from Dave Scott, if someone asked you, hey, Dave, what do you think Sasquatch is? What would your answer be to them?
I don't know. But I do think there is something that is very special about this creature. I don't know if it's supernatural. I don't know if it's interdimensional. Guys, look, the best evidence, we have seen photographs of fresh Sasquatch prints in the snow that just disappear. Now, the morons at the BFRO will try and tell you that, Sasquatch just backed up in its own track. Well, first off, that's impossible. As a human, if you've ever tried to walk backwards in your own tracks, you never hit the track. This would leave double prints. There are no double prints.
You can't even match up the dermal ridge either. That'd be impossible.
Can't match up the dermal ridges, nothing. Plus, when you walk forward, you're kicking up snow. When you walk backwards, you kick up snow in the opposite direction. because one is aerobic, one is anaerobic. It's a completely different exercise. And you're not going to be able to do that. So I don't know what it is. I don't think it's a Gigantopithecus. There's one idiot here in British Columbia who calls it the monkey. I'm going out for the monkey.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. It's not a monkey. All right. We're dealing with something that is 100% gone Rambo on its territory, where it can blend into everything. I don't know whether it can cloak itself. I don't know, but why would people say there's that predator type of look to it? What about the pixelation that I saw and my friends saw before we got roared at? The talking, I've heard the talking, just like Ronald Moorhead in the Sierra Sounds with the samurai chatter. Okay, we know this is an intelligent creature. We know it's smart. We know that it's become extremely adept in camouflaging itself, but we also know it's curious. We also know that it doesn't like technology. We also assume that it doesn't like the smell of gunpowder, which is why most people who have encounters with it are not carrying any type of arms. We know a lot about it. What we don't know is what is it, because we don't have a body. Okay? And my good friend Duke, he believes that the bodies have been found and they've been taken to the Smithsonian, or the government has it, and it's a big conspiracy. This is where probably one of the only things him and I agree to disagree on, because I believe nature is very good at cleaning up after itself. Okay? And look how long it took us to find gorillas, certain types of gorillas. The silverback gorilla we never knew existed. It was Sasquatch of Africa until it was found. It took us forever to find elephant graves, that there was actually elephant cemeteries where elephants went to die. So what's with this creature? I'm not ruling anything out. I don't know if it's alien. I don't know if it's anything. I do know that it exists, and that's the only thing I can say, Rob. It exists. How? Don't know. If it's alien or interdimensional or supernatural, why do we hear it feeding on deer or hogs or rabbits? Why would it need to eat for substance if it wasn't real? But then again, how come we can't find a damn body? And people who will say, well, have you ever found a dead carcass in the woods of a bear? Yeah, I've seen two. They're out there.
They're rare, but they're out there.
Exactly. So what it is, I don't know. I think it's a hybrid of some sort. I don't believe it's human. May have some human DNA, which is screwy, but I don't believe it's human at all. I don't think it's us from a caveman past. Not at all. But there is some intelligence to it.
Well, I know one of Jason's favorite sayings is we can't say what it is because we don't know what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Can I please read a comment from the chat room?
Sure.
Strangeland brings up a good comment here. Thomas Steenberg, who I've talked to, and I like Thomas. This is a true statement. Calls any view other than an unknown ape. The people are crazy, and they are the inmates running the asylum. This think that's an ignorant insult to anyone thinking differently. And I've talked and debated that with Thomas, and he's a very stubborn Canadian on it. Very stubborn. But here's the thing, and this is the problem we have in the field of Sasquatch. It's the problem we have in UFOs. It's a problem that we have in the entire phenomena. We have to get out of conducting opinion. There's too much opinion being conducted in the field. Science is about a hypothesis, a theory, the probabilities, the experimentation, and then the conclusions. At no point in the steps of conducting a scientific experiment does opinion matter. And the problem that we have with people like Thomas, and this is nothing that I wouldn't say to his face. I said it when I had Cliff Barrickman on the show. I even told Cliff, you could go back in that episode. I said, Cliff, you're better than that. Come on. You're better than that. Stop conducting opinion. Opinion solves nothing. Opinion is assumption, which makes an ass out of you and me. And even the best scientists in the world, they have opinions, but they know that their opinions when it comes to UFOs or something along those lines means nothing. It means nothing. It's where the evidence takes them. So you think about people like Thomas Steenberg or Jody, what's his name? He's a Sasquatch researcher, or out
Jody
of Washington. No, not Jody Cook. Another guy. I apologize. Okay. Or pardon me, not Jody. Todd Neese. Okay. And a number of these other people, the Sasquatch Olympic Project. Okay. All of these guys who sit there, or the Monkey Boy in Vancouver. Okay. Look, I'm not saying this to be insultive to them because, once again, I'm not a researcher. I'm a journalist and I'm an experiencer. But the one thing that I do know in my relatively naive state of understanding science is that science has nothing to do with opinion. And if you are conducting opinion in the field, how much evidence are you losing?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you're not conducting anything if you're conducting opinion. And that's the biggest issue that we have, because here's the thing, Tex. The 99% of the people investigating Sasquatch, and trust me, there are some brilliant people in this field, including the company I'm keeping right now, who understand what this is all about. Okay? But we're not scientists.
Nope.
We're amateur researchers looking for anything plausibly scientific that can prove this career. Look, just because you use a drone or a K2 meter or a FLIR camera doesn't make you a scientist.
No,
it doesn't. Right? And Rob, that's the biggest problem that we have in this field. Number two, well, I'll say it because Gary Spikes is in the chat room using the word squatch. And I know Gary's going to laugh at that. But that's my opinion. But number one, for sure, I don't trust people who are conducting opinion. There's no research in conducting opinion. All you're doing is wasting time and trying to catch a sighting.
Now, I will tell you this. I don't have a problem with opinion as long as people put it forth as opinion.
Bingo. That's exactly it, Tex. I agree with you. You have to look. We all have opinion,
right?
Okay. When it comes to aliens, when it comes to aliens, I personally don't believe in the whole time travel that the Greys are the time travelers from the future. I don't believe that. What I do believe is that they're from outer space. That's my opinion. Could I be wrong on that? 100%. 100% I could be wrong. Do I poo-poo the idea that maybe they are us from the future? No. Because that's just as plausible as Sasquatch being interdimensional.
Yeah. That is true.
Absolutely.
That is true. Well, guys, we have about hit that wall, unfortunately. And we're going to have to say goodbye. And Dave, I'm looking forward to tonight because it's going to be a hoot.
Oh yeah. We're going to turn the tides tonight where I'm going to be grilling Tex and Rob on their monkey adventures in the forests of Michigan and Texas, and Garrett Spikes Jr. is going to come into our chat room and squatch this and squatch that, my favorite word ever. And Super Duke from World Bigfoot Radio is going to come in. And he's like, screw you guys. It's all about the Gugway. Gugway this, Gugway that. Gugway rub my feet on a massage table in a parlor.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. Again, Dave, thank you so much for coming on, talking with me and Tex. And I thank everybody in chat. Everybody's going to listen later, tomorrow, the next day. I don't care when you listen. Just listen. Space Style Radio. If you have not subscribed, please do subscribe. Like it, share it out. He just hit 16,000 on his way to 20. We're on our way to 3. We only need about 130 more, Tex. We're at $3,000.
Right.
Let's get it tonight on Dave's show, man. Let's come
That'd
out.
be awesome.
Show the
That'd
love.
be awesome.
Share
That'd be
this
awesome.
out. Share it
I'll,
out.
you know what? I'm going to put a little teaser out there for tonight, because you hit something, Dave, that I think we're going to agree on and we're going to disagree on, and that's the whole backtracking thing.
Well, good.
So tonight we'll get my side of it.
Let's drop the gloves. Let's go for it, big guy.
Cassius
ready.
Clay. Cassius Clay, and who's the other one? I don't remember that far back. Whoever he fought. Muhammad Ali was Cassius.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Yeah, Ali Frazier. Hey, man, Dave, thanks once again. Everyone subscribe to Dave. Hey, World Bigfoot Radio. We mentioned him quite a bit. You've all subscribed to him. Show him some love. Show Texas Front Porch some love. Show Bigfoot Michigan Rob some love. The Cryptid Huntress, one of our new associates, our team members, and also a member of Space Style Radio. Give her some love as well. For everybody, for Tex, for Dave Scott, and for BMR, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Bigfoot Rob, whatever you call me, just don't call me late for dinner. We're out.